faith if I had made 500 million, I would not be standing here. Well, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's so great to be here, and let me, as I begin, bring the greetings from your 232 congregational siblings in New England region, over there somewhere, I think, many of whom are also meeting today in rooms much like this to contemplate the issues of the day and to proceed faithfully. So I'm so very glad to be here with you. Thanks for having me. So I want to begin with a story, which is this. Yes, that's me there on the left. I'm so cute. And that's my little sister Julie there in the football helmet, looking fierce. So as a little girl, this age, I ran away from home at least twice every summer, sometimes 3 times. I would hurl myself out of the house with outrage at childhood oppressions, mostly like being left out of games by my big brother and his friends. So I'd hastily make a bologna and cheese sandwich, remember those? And I'd slather it with Miracle Whip. How many Miracle Whippers? So I would pack a napkin in my bag. Even as a 9-year-old, I was quite neat. I look very, very put together for wearing a football outfit here, don't I? So I'd pack all the sandwich, all the napkins, and whatever book I was reading, and I would just charge out of the house with 9-year-old indignation. My little sister Julie panicked and cried by the front door, which was secretly my favorite part of running away. And not because I was mean, but because she loved me so much. Aww. She still does. I was never going back, ever. The problem is, I never knew where to go. This is not me. But I never knew where to go once I left the house. My little world extended only a few blocks in any direction. Narnia's secret wardrobe was hidden a world away, and I could not find it. A warm hearth waited for me in that little house on the prairie, but I had no horses to get me there. I was sure I needed horses. Those places were not fiction to me. I literally could have told you, and probably still could, all about the path that Bilbo had taken from the Shire to Rivendell, but going out my own front door in those steamy Midwestern summers, I didn't know where to go, much less how to get there. All I could think to do was run away. And when I was a little girl, leaving was journey enough to ease my anger and my disappointment and my longing. 25 years later, when I first walked into a Unitarian Universalist church, I was propelled, like so many others, probably like many of you, by longing for a richer and more meaningful life. I had heard rumors, theological rumors, the only ones I listened to in those days, believe it or not. I had heard that within Unitarian Universalism, I might chart my own spiritual course and find my own way. And this promise of freedom totally appealed to my spiritual pride, my hubris, and my isolated independence, which I didn't even know I had. I had no way of knowing then what I know now, which is that the most profound gift of faith has been not having to chart my own course. This faith has given me and you and all of us a path laid down by others. The poet William Stafford writes, "There is a thread that you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change." Our faith, the faith that lives in you, that lives in us, is the thread that we follow. And when we follow that thread, when we hold on to it as if our lives depended on it, we begin to care for our elders' grandparents and our children's children, right? This in turn creates a deep sense of responsibility, which becomes moral imperative, which in turn creates lives rich with love and meaning. Right? Can I get an amen? You are free to chime in anytime you hear something that you like. You're also welcome to issue sounds that are not pleased. Any kind of feedback you want to offer me or each other, it's just fine. I'm serious. It's an invitation, people. Because some of the things I'm going to say today are going to be bold. That's what being the keynote allows me to do, and it also means I'm the the lead UUA staffer in New England, so I can't say some of these things there. I brought all the things here that I can't say there, and then Joan Van Biesler can pick up the pieces afterwards. Yay, Joan! No, I'm only kind of kidding. My goal is to be provocative. No, my goal is to be provocative, but not be disrespectful. I have ridden that line my whole life, people. So I'm going to be bold, really, and say this is not one of the provocative things, I don't think, even though it's bold. I want to say that's why we're here, that we want to create lives rich with meaning. Whatever our reasons are for actually being here today, whatever is on the business agenda, whatever is calling to us from the tables out in the hall, we are here, I think, to practice and grow the love and grace of Unitarian Universalism and to share it with others. All of this other stuff, it's just food for that purpose. We manifest this love in our own time and place, but we did not weave the thread that we follow. As Cornel West said in last year's Ware lecture, we did not give birth to ourselves. Any serious talk about our struggle for freedom has to call into question any conception of ourselves as being self-made. We didn't give birth to ourselves. Amen?
Amen.
So as people of faith, we are called to honor our ancestors and to name that which connects us. So what do we call the desire to hold on? The promise to hold on to that thread, and the commitment to becoming a thread in the tapestry of other people's belonging. Our ancestors had a name for this path and these promises, and they called it covenant. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. I propose to you today that we have to explain about the thread that we're weaving here, for it really is hard for others to see. And covenant gives us a way to explain what that thread is. It is the path we walk as Unitarian Universalists and how we walk it. So covenant, we use the word so much, it comes to mean so many things. So I want to try to propose a pretty specific definition here. It is the collection of sacred promises that we make to ourselves, to the holy, and to each other on the journey of a faithful life. It's the impulse to walk out of our homes, as each of you did, and arrive here. It's the call to sing the songs and to grab hold of that thread and to explain it to others. Our ancestors were so smart about covenant. They knew that it is more than a thing. It's more than just a piece of paper on which promises are written. They knew that covenant is also a verb. It's the process of making and practicing and failing at and remaking those promises together. It's a dynamic living thing. So if we each walk alone, charting our own course every which way, it is not possible to be religious people. We may be able to practice spirituality by ourselves, but it is by walking with others that personal spirituality transmits into religious community. Religion, I would say, our religion, Unitarian Universalism, requires that we walk with each other. I would propose that we cannot be Unitarian Universalists by ourselves.
Amen.
The exact same thing is true for our congregations. Our religion requires that congregations walk with others. Our congregations may be self-governed, but there is literally no such thing as a UU congregation that is not connected by covenant to the community of Unitarian Universalist congregations. To be an officially recognized congregation in our tradition is to unite in common purpose with other congregations by joining the association, right? What makes your congregation UU is not primarily your theology, no matter what you tell yourselves. It's how you are connected to the community of congregations. That is the association. There's a reason that our association is called the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. Incidentally, if you have any questions about this, Celie Katovich is here, and she was a student in my polity class. And feel free to quiz her at any time about any of the concepts you're hearing. And if she doesn't do such a great job, you make sure to let me know at the end. I'm just horrified. Poor Celie. great to see you. She does have it. She so has it. But this is part of the reason why Celie knows about this. This is who we are. So our religious ancestors who came to this country wanting to build that city on the hill were theologically identical to most of the people they left behind in England and Europe. This is not what we're taught. Their innovation was not their theology, it just wasn't. It was how they organized themselves together in the community of congregations. They wanted independence from the oppressive marriage of civil and religious authority, but they didn't want to be isolated from one another. So when the history books tell this story, they emphasize religious freedom, right? That's like the story that we think is ours. That's what we think our thread is, but it's not. What they should have emphasized is religious interdependence as the paradigm our ancestors created. What was revolutionary about congregational polity, the congregational way, was the covenant that connected them, not the theology that bound them. That they shared with most other people of the day. So congregations connecting one another in service of love and grace in the world, that is our thread. That is what makes us, literally, right? You know, most denominations, Protestant denominations, are named for their polity, not their theology, like the Presbyterians and the Episcopal Church. The Methodists? No. And we aren't, obviously Unitarian Universalists aren't, but this notion of congregational, how many of you have heard about congregational polity before? Oh, I love you so much. We're going to talk about that in a second. But we think that freedom is our birthright, but I'm going to propose that in fact, interdependence is. So one of the reasons we can think that freedom is at our core is that each of us can choose to be a part of our communities. They're sort of voluntary associations is what the great Conrad Wright called them. So our congregations are, of course, voluntary. You all chose to go because members and friends, just like you, participate according to your conscience. No one is compelled by creedal requirement or priestly mandate to join a UU congregation. But we are nonetheless called to engage in religious community, right? So something can be voluntary and we can still be responding to a call. Whether by individual conscience, by justice-seeking community, or by God, Unitarian Universalism teaches us that we are called to create beloved community in community, and that we must do that together. So today, all of you are here, at least in part, to be stewards of the future of Unitarian Universalism as it lives here in New York. This is a huge responsibility. I don't know how strongly you feel it, but this is a moment of history, my friends. It's another step, another opportunity for faithful movement forward. And you have to figure out, especially now, what is the thread that you follow? The thing that remains steady when all else changes, even as you adapt and grow. This is faithful leadership. But what becomes faithful about it isn't the outcome, it's the way. And I'm going to suggest that way is covenant. You are on the cusp of some very important and faithful decisions, and the good news is that you really don't have to find your own way. Our faith has given you that thread to follow, and while you hold it, you cannot get lost. But here's the thing, my friends. We are really seriously, now by we I don't mean you, I mean the collective we in our movement, are really in danger of forgetting the thread that Unitarian Universalism has woven by our ancestors and followed by all the people who came before us. And I'm here to talk with you a little bit this morning about how that thread has become frayed and what we can do about it. I mean what you can do about it right here. But first I have to tell you another quick story. To my mind, as a little bit of a history buff, I am just amazed when I think about the theological miracles that our people have wrought. If you think about the theological miraculousness of surviving a transition from Christianity being our central story in two different streams, to really busting across theological, that Christian story as the center and welcoming humanists and atheists and agnostics and becoming all of that abundant difference theologically. I don't know of any other religious movement that has done that and still remained itself at the end. There's plenty of stories of evolution, religious evolution, But I just think ours is an absolute miracle story. As Unitarians and as Universalists, and then as Unitarian Universalists, we have allowed our fundamental beliefs to change over the centuries according to conscience and science and revelation. Our innovation was always in the sources of authority we allowed to influence our evolution, and there they are, conscience and science and revelation. Our people have integrated the rationalism of science, the intuition of transcendentalism, and the ethics of humanism. We've managed to stay together even as that core Christian story receded as one among many wisdom stories. And what I would suggest to you is that covenant, the collective practice of being in religious community, is how we have stayed together, and it's how we will stay together. Our theologies may differ about who or what is calling us, but we're united in a belief that we are part of an interdependent web of existence, wherever it comes from and however manifests in our individual lives. It's that which compels us to come together. I would suggest that we have survived this radical theological evolution because we knew what thread we were following. And the thread was so strong, it allowed us to withstand changes of that magnitude. Isn't that amazing? That's the story of Unitarian Universalism I wish we would tell a little more of. We're theological badasses. Allowing this kind of diversity. I think it's amazing. It's crazy. I've totally lost my place. I got so excited and I got a little shy saying we're badass. So it's kind of a bold thing, I think, to claim that people cannot be Unitarian Universalists by themselves. There's always somebody who pulls me out of the room afterwards and says, that's not right. But I want to draw a parallel here. What was that?
It is totally right.
I got an amen from Joan. Yay, Joan. So I want to draw a parallel to support this claim. In our tradition, as you know, congregations ordain ministers, right? But only the community of congregations can admit members into fellowship. Did you know that? So we have like a dual process for recognizing ministers. One is the ordination process that congregations own, and then there's the fellowship process, which is a sort of credential that is owned by the community of congregations, right? So a minister who is ordained but not fellowshipped can call themselves the minister of a specific church, that specific church. But they cannot call themselves a Unitarian Universalist minister. Did you know that? The individual church claims that minister, the individual church who ordained them. They claim that minister, but the larger movement does not. So in exactly the same way, a person can claim Unitarian Universalist beliefs, but if they're not part of a covenanted community, then they have not been claimed back. Our faith is practiced in covenanted community. Individual beliefs may constitute spirituality, but they are not religious until they are exercised in community. So individual beliefs can constitute spirituality, but they are not religious and they are not Unitarian Universalists. This would be a good time for an amen.
Amen.
Amen. It's kind of a bold thing to say because it challenges the edges of freedom. And I'm going to suggest over and over again, implicitly really, that claiming Unitarian Universalism is grossly insufficient. You have to be claimed by it in order to be Unitarian Universalist. Participation in our congregations and communities is voluntary in the sense that it's not required by external authority, right? Nobody tells us to do that. But I would suggest also that we're still responsible to the call to manifest religious community by co-creating it. Our faith requires us to help increase the sum of love and justice in the world. Our faith places claims on us, moral and ethical, and for some of us, theological duty claims and compels us. We can ignore those claims, but they endure anyway. So once again, show me hands again of folks who have heard and feel like you could offer I'm not going to ask you to, except for Seeley. How many of you have heard and feel like you could define congregational polity? All right. See, he's never talking to me again. So somewhere along the line, congregational polity, this thing called congregational polity, I'm going to use air quotes because I'm about to suggest that what we think it is, it ain't. Somehow it became conflated with the autonomy of individual congregations. Somewhere along the line, if you ask most people what is congregational polity, they will say that means congregations don't have anyone who get to tell them what to do. We get to ordain our own ministers, we get to set our own budget, but we're independent, which is very powerful for people, and I don't mean to be disrespectful about it. But what's happened is that the rich dimensionality of mutual covenant and interdependence has been totally sheared off that definition, leaving only the barest bones of isolated self-governance and independence. I would suggest that congregational polity is a bird grounded with a broken wing. So in some ways is our faith. There is an exact parallel between the way we understand congregations' relationships to one another and individual UU's relationships to their congregations and communities. In just the same way, the independence of individual UUs is often privileged over interdependent community in our congregations, right? So exploring the conscience and individual journeys of individual people is often perceived as the ultimate purpose of UU communities. Our people therefore tend to organize ourselves around this conscience, around individual discernment and direct democracy, rather than mutually covenanted conscience, collective discernment, and collective action. How many of your congregations favor direct democracy over representative democracy? Right? People like to vote on stuff as individuals. They don't want someone that they have voted for to then make the decisions, right? Isn't that harder? Nobody won. How many of you have served on congregational boards? All of you. So practically all of you. So you know what I'm talking about, right? There's a profound discomfort with other people making decisions on our behalf. So what I'm going to suggest is that covenant, mutual covenant, is the missing link in our understanding of congregational polity. Congregational polity is not the autonomy of individual congregations, but the covenanted community of autonomous churches. That's words of the great Conrad Wright, and if you're not familiar with him, please go check him out. In fact, I'm sure Andrea has his books in the other room. So I want to repeat this again. Congregational polity is not the autonomy of individual congregations, but the communion of autonomous churches, a significantly different thing. Believing that congregational polity is primarily concerned with supporting and protecting individual voices in congregations is nothing less than heresy. I just called it heresy, and I did it on purpose. This is not some sort of cute renegade kind of heresy that we praise teenagers for. I mean this in a literal way, like apostasy, the renunciation or abandonment of religious principle. Equating congregational polity with autonomy undermines our interconnectedness, it erodes our covenant, and it endangers our communities. It is flat out ahistorical, not to mention wrong. Here's why I think we should care about that. This pervasive misinterpretation of congregational polity, with its emphasis on individual conscience and direct democracy, is a major cause of decline and source of ill health in Unitarian Universalist congregations. Right? The clapping, I appreciate it. It makes me sad. I can literally feel myself tearing up because I know that it comes at the cost of our leaders, these faithful souls who try to chart a common purpose forward and are repeatedly undermined by these behaviors that we support, at least implicitly, in our congregational cultures. This drives healthy people away, it weakens connection among our churches and beyond, and it perpetuates mind-boggling degrees of suspicion about leaders in general and about our Unitarian Universalist Association in particular. We are a people of competing commitments. The freedom of belief that has helped us remain flexible in light of new revelation and experience also weakens our binding ties. We value interconnection, but we're cautious about asking much of each other. As individuals and groups, we want to belong, but we are very reluctant to be claimed. This tension between freedom and connection is our birthright as religious liberals. It's not something to be permanently resolved, but to be lived in artfully. But I would suggest we've really lost our way. Our collective anxiety about this tension and the resulting deification of individual conscience have squashed the rich dimensionality of covenant until it has become synonymous with a vague and even ambivalent sense of commitment to each other. We have abstractified covenant into spiritual cohabitation, the big tent under which we eat at separate tables.
Amen.
Covenant lives on as a vestigial metaphor for interconnection in our movement, but it is a bird grounded with a broken wing. The call to covenant might be a theological imperative, but our collective covenant, those among UU's congregations, our collective covenant is not worth the paper it isn't written on. For there is no actual covenant. I'm going to propose there is no covenant connecting UU congregations. As congregations, we covenant to affirm and promote the principles. Affirming and promoting shared values is important, but it puts tepid commitment at our collective center, asks virtually nothing of us, and offers virtually nothing. This is not covenanting, this is parallel play. It's what toddlers do. I had to claps and then I went to groans. What happens when we put that at our center? We have a weak center that is not worthy of us, and it's definitely not worthy of our children. Covenant may be a predominant metaphor in our movement, but as a practice, it is almost non-existent in associational Unitarian Universalism. The call to covenant is there at the heart of our faith. It's an echo from our collective past. We sense that interconnection, though, don't we? There may not be this formal covenant, but we know we're connected. It's like an echo. We preach it, as Jennifer did so beautifully this morning. We rely on it. But covenant must be more than impulse and echo. It must be activated intentionally for the full power of liberal religion to be revealed. And I believe the future of associational Unitarian Universalism is at stake. I believe we will dissolve ourselves into oblivion unless we strengthen our core. If Unitarian Universalism is to survive even the current century, we must actively counter forces of individual isolation and institutional disillusion, even as we morph into new forms. We must revitalize that which connects us. We must reanimate covenant. But there's a problem. There's a lot of problems. For many congregations, the meaning of covenant has flattened into the means by which people share expectations and exercise a degree of control over individual behavior, right?
Yeah.
Behavioral covenants are the only way most of our congregations experience covenant. And there's no mistaking the function, which is to control unhealthy individual behavior. Our people have inadvertently learned that covenants are about getting other people to do things and stop doing things. This is a very bad definition of covenant.
Mm-hmm.
We totally come by this honestly, though. I want to very quickly say the Cambridge Platform, the founding agreement of our congregational way. In what year was the congregational polity?
1348.
Oh, Sealy. 1648. I had to look it up. She hates me now. The Cambridge Platform is full of stipulations, hysterical ones governing individual behavior, like that the treasurer must not be given to too much wine. and many more serious ones. So anyone who has ever tried to live in religious community knows how important it is to have clear expectations about how we'll try to be with one another, right? But for our Puritan ancestors, the motivation for governing individual behavior was not copacetic community life, but deep awareness that people who practice loving together are best able to serve God. Most modern covenants are hobbled to roam only in the realm of interpersonal relationships. They are not monodimensional, and they do not have verticality, like the covenants of old. Though the language of our principles and purposes changed several times, you mean I didn't know this, the language changed over the years between consolidation in 1961 and the current 1995 version. That introductory sentence, which is in the Gray Hymnal, I'm sure you're familiar with it, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, that has not changed, nor has the collective promise enshrined in our UUA bylaws, where member congregations promise, this is what we say, this is the extent of it, wait for it, people. We promise one another our mutual trust and support. That is definitely a covenant written by committee of blessed memory. Would you have wanted to be on that committee? No way. For all but our newest, here's the other piece, for all but our very newest congregations, the commitment to covenant with the association happened last in 1995, and then only by the individual delegates who happened to come to that GA. Am I wrong, or is this a really bad way of helping congregations to feel connected to one another? There is a deep corollary here. So there's this institutional problem that is exactly mirrored in individual congregations. There's such a deep corollary here to our practice of individual membership within congregations, where a single act by a few representatives at a single moment in time is expected to hold all the weight of covenantal connection among our 1,100 congregations. This is ridiculous. And sad. The weakness of our collective covenantal bonds has been a challenge throughout Unitarian Universalist history because of this tension between freedom and interdependence. And we've earned it, it's ours, we love it. But signs of weak associational identity and commitment are absolutely everywhere. Here are just some of them. The widespread failure of congregations to be in meaningful relationship with the community of congregations. Now, you are here, God bless you, but most people never see the light of a conference room like this. that metaphor didn't work well. You're unusual. Also, the conflation of congregational polity with congregational autonomy. The belief that our association is the institution of the UUA rather than the community of congregations. Weak. Low and deteriorating rates of congregational giving to districts and regions and to our association, and distrust and suspicion of the UUA, which is very hard to explain the magnitude of until you're on staff and you feel it all the time. It is absolutely soul-killing. This is the context in which today's conversations are happening, your conversations. These are the tensions we're dealing with and attempting to resolve. This is what you're doing here, and it's hard, and it's absolutely vital to the future of our faith. So how many of you have heard the term regionalization? How many of you have said the word regionalization 50 times or more? What a bad word that is. Oops, I myself. I've gone too fast here. Anyway, how could anyone be in favor of something that sounds so institutional and even faintly menacing? I really wish we had thought to call it something else, so here's my attempt at a do-over. Let's call it sharing with our neighbors. Or let's call it, enlarging who we are, or letting go of old stuff so we can keep evolving. That would be so much more faithful to the purpose of what the thing is. Reframing is so important. It's wicked important, as we say over in Boston. So let me offer you another reframe of the issues that I believe is at the heart of the debate about regionalization. And don't worry, I'm bringing it on home now. I know I've said a lot of words, but I'm bringing it. But to set this up, I want to ask you all a question, but you only have to answer it in your hearts. You don't have to raise your hand unless you're feeling bold or brave or exhibitionist or something, or aggressive. So how many of you feel suspicious of what I have to say this morning because I work for the UUA? Yeah. How many of you wonder if the UUA has a secret or at least undisclosed agenda that is driving this whole regionalization thing? You laugh, in New England, that's what people think. In other parts of the world, that's what a lot of people think, is that it is literally a conspiracy to get your money.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you don't think that. I'm coming over here more often.
We'll sign you up.
I'm going to live with you, Jeff. But there's a very good, and I know that I'm bringing some humor to it, but there's a very good reason people think that. It's because the debate about regionalization that's happening all over the country, in districts just like yours, in the West, in the South, in the Midwest, and definitely in New England, is a proxy for the tension between independence and interdependence that has lived in our UU system for centuries. We've earned it. We've earned that tension. But just because we've earned these concerns doesn't mean we can't let them go in favor of better ideas and newer realities. So I want to explain just a moment about this as I wind down. I have to say just a word or two about what our association actually is. So I'm sure that you guys know that our UUA is comprised of member congregations in which members relate to each other through the associational center to accomplish what they can't accomplish alone, like creating religious education curricula and hymnals and supporting ministerial credentialing and searching and settling ministers, representing the community of congregations, standing on the side of love, right? You know all that. Connection between and among congregations is largely expressed via shared membership in the associational core. Y'all's congregations are connected to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Phoenix, and Monterey, and everywhere else through the associational core.
I'm going to North Carolina.
You are? All right. Even in North Carolina. The association provides the support that congregations promise to one another. And the congregations come together at GA to do the business of the association, right? You know all that. This way of organizing is a centralized network with a hub in the middle where the members largely connect to each other through that hub. Many congregations organize the same way, incidentally, especially larger ones, where members join the core and are connected to each other by virtue of that membership. The tie that binds member congregations is this promise to affirm and promote UU principles and to provide each other with mutual trust and support. While individual congregations affirm and promote the principles according to their judgment and practices, the association is the primary means through which congregations support one another. And I call this association by proxy, where the core is charged with enacting the commitments of the members. Most membership organizations work this way, incidentally. It's a time-honored way of sharing resources. The problem is, and this is a very big problem, the problem is that covenants cannot be maintained by proxy. Asking our Unitarian Universalist Association to fulfill covenant on behalf of member congregations is like expecting the National Football League to throw a catchable pass. It is just not possible. So it's no wonder. In the absence of robust lateral relationships between and among local congregations, our congregations feel isolated from one another. And not coincidentally, they feel suspicious of the institution they perceive as being at the center. I propose that there is a direct relationship between suspicion of the UUA and the isolation of the people in congregations who are feeling suspicious. It's just that we name that isolation autonomy, and we call it a primary value. This entire keynote can be summed up right there. Autonomy is not who we are. Connected is who we are. Covenantal is who we are, not because I say so or because the UUA says so, because that's what Unitarian Universalism is.
Amen.
We are, all of us together, the community of congregations. You have before you today an opportunity to consider where you want to land on the continuum of autonomy and interdependence. There is value all along that continuum, make no mistake. Congregational independence has been and always will be a crucial aspect of Unitarian Universalism. But as you vote, I ask you to consider the thread that you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. The forces of disillusion and disconnection are so strong. Our people come to Unitarian Universalism just as you came here to help navigate and withstand all that alienates us from meaning and connection. My friends, this is holy work. It is the work of a spiritual lifetime. Sometimes we're the trailblazers, breaking new theological ground for people to follow. Sometimes we are the child hurling herself out of the house, propelled by indignation. May we also be the faithful people who don't ever let go of the threads of connection. May we call each other back when we do. May we remember that we did not give birth to ourselves. May we speak the names of our ancestors and remember our children's children. And may we ever and continuously open ourselves up to claiming and being claimed by each other, by all that is holy, and by covenant. Amen? Amen. Amen. Thank you.